for other people who can't be here.
That's all right.
Yeah.
So can everyone see my slides? Is it coming up?
Yes, fine for me. Can everybody? Oh, there's somebody in chat.
Yes, okay. Okay, I'll get started then. So yeah, as Corinne mentioned, I'm in my final year of my PhD at UCL, and I'm basically studying what urban green spaces mean to young people, in particular adolescents. This is our building PEARL. So this stands for the Person Environment Activity Research Lab. We're based in Dagenham in East London, and we're researchers who are interested in how people interact with the environment, with the physical environment, and how we can make the physical environment more conducive for people and their well-being. And I've decided to focus on urban green spaces, and this is the age group that I'm looking at. So adolescence is a vast category of people. I'll give you the World Health Organization definition. So it's this phase of life between childhood and adulthood, from the ages of 10 to 19. And you can already see that that's quite broad, and it's not fair to kind of group 10 to 19 together. So what I've done in this PhD is broken down adolescence into three categories. And it starts from, later childhood, going on to early adolescence, and then on to adolescence, before going on to adulthood. And I think this is very important, this distinguishment between these different age groups, as when you enter adolescence, you're going through many different transitions of life, which is very important to take into account when you're studying a diverse group like this. And so urban green spaces can look very different depending on how they're structured and organized and what's in them. And you yourself may use green spaces in different ways depending on the day. So you might go for a walk after work, or you might go there to just relax with friends and family. If there's a cafe in the park, you might go get a cup of coffee. So depending on what these spaces look like, people use them in different ways and can get many different benefits from them. And the benefits are vast. According to other researchers, they have found, for example, lower risk of physical health diseases such as diabetes. There's some research to suggest that women who live nearer to green spaces have a lower risk of obesity. The social connections we can build in green spaces are good for us, and they're good for our brain. Also, going for a walk through the park has some cognitive benefits, and some researchers have found better cognitive performances in children and young people after they've interacted with a green space. So there are all of these benefits, and this is a map of London, of kind of illustrates how much green space there is. And to give you an idea, London is covered in about 18% of green space, which is actually more than all of the roads and railways combined in the city. So we have a lot of green space in London, and we know that there are all of these benefits to our health and mental health. Yet adolescent health, mental health is on a decline. So physical activity levels in adolescent girls is very low. Obesity rates are high in young people in the UK, and also mental health and mental well-being is on a decline in adolescents. So what's missing is this relationship between the quality, rather than looking at the quantity, how much green space there is. What's missing is looking at the quality of these spaces. So what do these spaces actually look like? And what are people's individual relationships with these spaces, and how can this help our well-being and health? So essentially that's what I'm investigating in my PhD. So I'm looking at this person to environment interaction with the quality of the green space, as opposed to how much green space you have in your neighborhood. I'm looking at what these spaces look like, and then this individual interaction with the space, and then the kind of feelings that are brought about. And then hopefully this can help us understand how green space is then related to well-being, and how we can make green spaces better for well-being. And the way I did this was to conduct some focus groups with adolescents themselves. So I connected with a few local secondary schools in the borough that we're working in, where Paul is. And we did some focus groups online. We used Zoom. So it was online because it was during the pandemic year. So we did these between March and May in 2021. And there was about between 4 to 8 participants in each group, and we did 4 focus groups. So we looked at the younger girls, we looked at 12-year-old girls, we looked at 12-year-old boys, and we also did 16-year-old girls and 16-year-old boys. And on the right is just a illustration of one activity we did whilst we were in the focus groups. So we had a bunch of post-it notes in yellow, and then we asked them to prioritize what they would like to see in their parks, and we've asked them to highlight it in pink, so you can see here on the left. And this is a word cloud that came out of the focus groups, out of all of them. And you can see words like family, anxiety, authority, but I've highlighted a few just to give you an example of what's important to an adolescent in green spaces. So independence came up for the older ones. So for the 16-year-olds, they like to go to green spaces to get that independence. They have less kind of authority ruling over them, so they wouldn't need to ask for permission from their parents, and they just go to the park on their own or with their friends. And then I highlighted pretty trees. So this was something talked about by the girls, by younger and older girls. They tended to refer to nature as aesthetical or beautiful, and very positive associations with nature. And then play was something that the younger boys would talk about. So they would use green spaces to kind of just run around and be free and play sports, play with their friends. And then finally, dogs. So in particular, younger girls would highlight this fear that they had of dogs in green spaces. So whilst they would like to go there and play with their friends and socialize, there was this kind of limiting fear of the kind of dogs that were around in the same area and running around them and creating a sense of anxiety and fear in green spaces. And these words are color coded as well. So these purple ones represent safety. So things like authority, safety, crime, anxiety. The green ones refer to restoration. So these are things like relaxing activities, coming back to being grounded. And then finally, the blue ones represent recreation. So that's things like play and, running around. And they're all they don't work in isolation. So these terms are all interrelated and connected in some way. So, for example, to be able to play and be free in green space, you'd also need that safety aspect. You need to feel safe, and so forth. Does this make sense so far?
Anxiety.
Anxiety?
Anxiety.
Does someone have a question about anxiety?
I don't know where that came from.
Okay, we can.
Some things are not on. I'm just making sure that some things are on mute that maybe should be.
Okay, no worries. We can come back to it at the end. So I don't have time to go through all of the themes that came out. We had about 11 themes altogether. So for the purpose of this presentation, I'll just talk about these 3 themes. And I think these are, quite important ones to highlight to understand the adolescent experience of urban green spaces. So the first one is adolescents feel left out of the design. So what this means is we have 2 groups of adolescents. We've got the older groups, the 16-year-olds, and the younger ones, the 12-year-olds, who all point towards that green spaces aren't really designed for their age group, and that they don't really know what to do there when they go. So there's a quote here from an older girl where she says, parks are mostly aimed for children, and there aren't many activities. So if I go there, I would either take my little cousin and watch her play or walk around the park. And I've included these images where you can see a group of older adolescents just kind of hanging around in a playground in urban green space. And they're not really doing anything. They're kind of just hanging around there. But then this creates a level of uncertainty for the younger adolescents. So it kind of creates a sense of anxiety for them. They don't really know what they would say things like they don't really know what they're doing there, or they would kind of feel intimidated by them just hanging around and not really using the equipment. And then this image here on the bottom right corner is something that they would refer to as creating a sense of fear, where older adolescents would use equipment in a way that was fun for them, but then intimidating for the younger adolescents. And then this quote here by a year 7 girl, so a 12-year-old girl, she said, what would make the parks better is that if it was only for the smaller kids that would actually use the facilities and play, and there's also a part for the older kids that would hang about and stuff. So you can see this kind of competing demand between the older and younger adolescents in playgrounds and in green spaces. So moving on to the second theme, how adolescents use green spaces. So we found in the focus groups, we found there was a difference between how girls and boys like to use green spaces. So the girls would refer to stuff like, going there to relax, just to sit around on the grass, and either they would go there alone and listen to some music, or to read, or to just kind of sit under the sun and think for a bit. And they would do more, and so they would do more individual-based activities. And I also included individual physical activities. So we had some girls talking about just going for a walk, just taking their dogs for a walk, also just kind of just lying around on their own. And then the things that they would prioritize in green space were things like the aesthetics and the quality of the space. So they were quite interested in, how pretty does the space look to them? Are there pretty flowers for me to look at? Are the trees nice to look at? Is it kind of run down? If it doesn't look nice, then they weren't really interested in interacting with the space. Whereas the boys were a little bit different. So the boys wouldn't really talk about relaxing in green space. They would just talk about kind of, doing physical activity, playing sports, playing around with friends, but also they would talk about being in a group as opposed to being alone. So they would go there with a group of friends, or they would go to meet their friends in green spaces and play around. And instead of being focused on the quality of the space, they were more focused on how functional was this space. So can I play a game of basketball here, for example, or can I ride my bike in the space? And then finally, the third theme was about the safety concerns. So again, I wanted to highlight the differences between gender and also age groups. So in terms of safety, what came up for the boys was that they were more concerned about violence, so strong violence and group crime, whereas the girls were more concerned about individual and personal crime. So we had some girls talk about feeling unsafe in green space because someone might approach them and talk to them in an inappropriate way, whereas some of the boys would refer to very strong violence. So things like gang crime, drug dealers in parks, and physical violence. So being involved in an altercation or witnessing an altercation. And then for the differences in age, as I mentioned earlier, the younger girls were specifically afraid of dogs and also dog owner behavior. So some of the girls actually mentioned, the younger girls, the 12-year-olds, would mention if they were out either walking their own dog or even being without a dog, they would be afraid of dog owners' behaviors. So they would mention things like being approached inappropriately by the owner. I remember one girl mentioned that the owner of the dog asked her to pet his dog, and his dog didn't look very friendly and looked a bit aggressive. So things like that. And then finally, the younger adolescents, both girls and boys, mentioned this fear of the older adolescents. So some, the things about just older adolescents hanging around in the same spaces, but not actually using the equipment, or just, kind of congregating in a group would be intimidating to younger girls and boys. And so my kind of thoughts so far based on these findings is to firstly consider how we're designing the built environment, and are we taking into account all these different needs of groups of people, and secondly, that adolescents are not a homogeneous group, so they're not the same. There are differences that we need to look at. So the things about gender and the age groups, and potentially other factors such as ethnicity. But that wasn't a focus of my research. And then finally, to actually get adolescents involved in designing of green spaces, and get them involved, to kind of listen to what they have to say. So doing things like this kind of research where you're eliciting their opinions and their thoughts and experiences of green spaces, because this is the only way that we can understand how to build spaces and public spaces that will serve not only them, but whole communities. And that all goes to serve cohesive communities and safer neighborhoods. And if adolescents are happy, their families are going to be happy. They're going to have a public space to go to, and they're not just going to be hanging around in spaces that aren't really designed for hanging around. So yeah, I think that comes to the end of my presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Or shall I go over anything that didn't make sense? Does that mean everyone understood?
Thank you, Sarah. I'm not sure. Maybe people do have questions.
Yeah, feel free to write in the chat as well.
It's a good idea.
Oh, I can't really see the chat.
Oh, okay. I think we can now. I mean, maybe you can even just ask people what are the green spaces near them, if they have any. And some people here may have children or may use them themselves. Yeah. I don't know. I think Abdullahi is in London. And I know some of the others are in Bristol.
Yeah, so this cohort of adolescents are based in a borough in London, in East London in particular. So what's that?
Is that you, Abdullahi?
Yeah, I was joining later. I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or 10 minutes ago I joined. But really, there are a lot of things.
Yeah.
The what call it exciting. That one, even I have. And the dogs, I don't know. I live in Netherlands many years, and the dogs they are all behave well. Even if you have animal like cats and dogs, you pay a lot of money. And here I can see young man or Indian or Asian or he have a big dog, maybe 200 kilo or bulldog or little dog, or he have the rope, he bullying and the dog stronger than him, and I don't know why the government allow those people.
So do you see that in parks, Abdullahi? Do you see that out near where you are?
I saw the bag is was public, and I saw the bag.
Yeah.
I saw but I'm not scared of the dog. But there's some people, for example, like children, like so. The person who have the dog, owner of the dog, maybe some people, the young man, I saw the one police, the dog beat him, and they say low, the 2 years prison, and something like that. Because the young of children crime, they saying my dog is my defeater.
What do you think,
My
Sara?
dog is my way. My dog is my dog is my weapon.
So Sara, what do you
Yes.
think about this? Is going to be a problem for many people in parks, do you think? It was not just for adolescents even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, go on, Abdullahi.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So what were you going to say, Abdullahi?
Yeah, and that's happening really. So I don't know, the police and the councils of the way they're doing, they're not organized, and they're not doing, they're taking the what calling this dog have responsibility. Some people he hitting or shouting, something like, and all the people are there's some people they are good manners. The dog is listening, educated dog. One time I remember I was going Holborn. London School of Business is, I think it was 2014 or 15, I don't know. But I remember one guardian dog, English lady, she was, we are underground, Piccadilly line. She was listening music, and dog, when she reached the stop train, he pulled him, and she remembered she was out. And they, down, this guardian dog is educated dog and something like that. It's not different to all the dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some people, they are leaders. They are, this dog is better than him. And even Allah has mentioned the Quran, the educated dog is better than other dogs. So see, we mustn't, even the dogs, they need educated dog.
Yeah. So actually one of the recommendations that I'm going to make to London boroughs and councils is about dog owner behavior, and
Yes.
how, yeah, and just how we need to raise awareness about how some owners, not all owners, behave in parks and green spaces, and how it can affect the safety, how people feel safe in green spaces, and also just the idea of maybe in children areas to kind of keep dogs on leashes, and to be aware of how particularly younger people can feel unsafe from dogs running around in the same kind of playground or same spaces as children. Well, we'll see how the councils receive that. But so far, I think Barking and Dagenham and also Haringey Council, the ones that I've spoken to, have also raised this issue, and have also heard from their own residents that it is a problem, and they do want to do something about it.
Thank you. Does anybody here have any other ideas about how parks might be more welcoming for younger people? I mean, Sara already has a lot of ideas about this, but what do you think are important elements? Rahma, what do you think, for instance, would make children and older children as well feel happy about being in parks and other green spaces? Are you there, Rahma? Not sure she is online.
Are there any particular slides that anyone wants to see
Yes.
again?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
I would love to ask one question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Actually, in your research, you focused on adolescents, yeah?
Yeah.
So, I do understand the importance of nature for people. Like, it's really important. Why do you focus on adolescence?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if I go back to this slide, adolescents, I decided to look at this group because of how neglected they have been in not just green spaces, but urban design as a whole. So even buildings and, the streets are kind of designed mainly for adults, with, some minor exceptions of looking at children as well. But what tends to happen with adolescents is that they group together with children. But as you can see, or may have understood from this presentation, is that there are many different needs of adolescents that are different to children and different to adults that also need to be considered. And then just also understanding that they do feel left out of green spaces, and green spaces are kind of designed with a one-size-fits-all approach. And if you go to any park and go to a playground, you'll see that it's particularly used by younger children. And there isn't really that kind of provision made for older adolescents. So these were the main reasons why I decided to look at this group.
Thank you very much. This is really interesting topic. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, and a really good question, Yosef, also. Thank you. Yeah, what about other people? Does anybody else have questions or thoughts about this? Like, Adunya, you were here earlier. Do you have any thoughts about this work?
Well, it's quite interesting because it's quite good observant. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I think it's very nice topic to talk even about, let alone to have as its research, because people doesn't have that awareness or observance to go to just to aware of those activities which is going on that age, to walk around, to do those all activities in the park, because I think it's a very nice place to have a peace of mind, to get together and to stay away from all those disturbances and to have a good time. So that's very appreciable issue to talk about it.
Yeah, and maybe we can pose the question to the whole group. What are the kind of different ways that you yourself use green spaces and parks? Like, what do you, when you go to your local park in your neighborhood, what do you typically do there?
I actually, sit and enjoy the fresh air. You see people's having a good time. You see people's get together. I think you give time to yourself to talk about a lot of stuff. Plus, people been to a lot of ups and downs, so they need somewhere to be relaxed, and they need a space, because when you get into the city, there are a lot of people's go walk around, a lot of vehicles, there's a little bit disturbance, so you want to stay away from that and try to have the fresh air and to have such a good interaction with the nature itself. So as for me, that's a good place to go to relax your mind and to have a good time.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Well, a couple of people just joined.
Yeah.
Oh, Abdullahi, you have something. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, adolescence, I think, is a difficult situation. The growing teenager or children uh, for they need what called education. I think education starts in schools and bar to parents. And there's some people like UK is a big country and big children, and some parents they can deal with children, and also school is teaching him what many things, but I don't think so. The school they can teach. They think it's maybe they can teach the subject lessons English or maths or physics or chemistry or something like that. But I was a long time doing the one project. They call it UK. For example, I come from Netherlands. You're not allowed to take the drinky or fast drinky or hot drinky in the bus. Sometimes the buses they are taking the break very hard and they splash there with the tea or the somebody else and the bus drivers and organize who are managing the London London and buses. They are not organized really, and I was sad that I was remember a couple of years ago. Even me, the 7 months ago, I was when he took the break, I was fall down the front of dash cover bus. I was still problem, and the children also they are teaching the school. They think it's wrong. But the problem maybe if you parent they have educator, you can teach him the children the good things, but some people they are very poor people or they come from demography some places they are they are doing something wrong and that's all the nature they say is something like that. Once yeah, one boy 70 years old, he come from Kuwait and he's speaking Arabic and always say he was 3 months in this country and I say to when I spoke to him his mother let us go learn in English just he just with the other country in Arabic and he was in the going sitting the computer 9:30 until 1 p.m. So I can't tell him the mother saying yeah it's a difficult situation it's سن المراهق the adolescence and something like that and it's not justice certification or so, something like that. But the child, they must learn what's called in behavior or human behavior, or they are like tutors or schools or something like that.
Abdullah, can
And
we get a response from Sara about this? Can you relate this to your work, Sara?
I think the thing you mentioned about was it you mentioned there was a young boy who was just on the computer all day.
yeah, that one. And other thing, my main question is why not the teacher schools they are producing the children. Maybe I think in this country there are more people, more population. London living, how many millions live in London?
Okay.
So the question is about why doesn't the teacher?
The
Why does
tutors or they also bring it, the schools. The
yeah
children are they doing? I think they are poor people or something like that. I'm not saying that all the people they are bad or all people they are well, but the many people they are good. They are teaching the children manners and that's you know, if you go there middle of day, when the 3 o'clock, when the school, the buses, they are shouting, they are doing many things like that. With all the children, they can speak up a little bit louder, but
So
behaviors,
this relates to behavior in
in
public
public
spaces.
spaces?
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question as well because one thing that I learned in my research was that adolescents tend to have this stigma of, being a nuisance in the neighborhood, behaving in ways that intimidate older people, the elderly, and just typically, if I think this relates in terms of my research, I think it relates back to again adolescents not really having the space to go to after school. If having the right kind of public space to go to where they can go and play with friends, they've got that provision for messing around with their friends, having fun. Instead they're kind of doing it in other public spaces, which perpetrates this idea that they are annoying to other community members. So they might go to, for example, the shopping center instead, or they might hang around in bus stops and play around there instead, but not being aware of the kind of annoyance that it creates to other community members. But I think this relates back to the green spaces not being adequately designed to accommodate adolescents and teenagers, and providing that space for them to mess around, run around safely. Does that make sense?
Sara, thank you. Yeah, I wonder if we could ask Matilda and Somia, who just came in actually. So you didn't see the presentation, Matilda and Somia, but Sara has been researching about the importance of parks and green spaces for young people, adolescents. So I wonder what your thoughts are about how important those kinds of spaces are for young people. Oh, they seem to have disappeared. I can't see Somia and Matilda now. Oh, Matilda's here. Matilda, do you have any thoughts about this? I know you just arrived on the call.
And also feel free to write in the chat.
Good idea.
Hello. I haven't really gotten what the topic is about. I was just about to catch up.
Okay. So, but
Yeah.
you could definitely join in, because this is about something we all know about, green spaces and how we use them, and how, sometimes they are set up well for children, but Sara has been talking about how they are not so good for older children, like adolescents and so on. Have you used do you use these spaces yourself, Matilda?
Pardon?
Do you use parks and other green spaces yourself?
Yeah, mostly for jogging or just to relax, really.
Yeah, I think so if we go to the slide where how adolescents use green spaces, so girls would typically say they would also just relax and do some sort of light physical activity, such as going for a walk on their own or with another friend. And I think this kind of echoes what other researchers have found about adults. And typically women like to go to green spaces for the same sort of reasons, to relax, to do some light kind of physical activities such as going for a walk, and also older women also tend to prioritize the aesthetics of green spaces, and I think we have a lot of males in this group, so maybe if anyone can suggest how they typically use green spaces, and if they kind of relate to how younger boys use green spaces. And you've got how they use it in green. Or Matilda, does it kind of resonate with you? Like, do you like to go to green spaces to look at the trees and look at plants and like to see kind of pretty flowers?
Definitely, it does resonate with me because sometimes you just want to clear your mind and relax, and you never know, you might make friends out there, and yeah, it's very relaxing. Just a new environment, fresh air, and meeting people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Sara, there seems to be, like, in the research, is there some similarity between younger women and older women in how they use spaces, and also between younger men and older men?
I think there are some similarities. However, I think there are a lot of differences as well. I so far I haven't really seen much similarity between boys and men. However, the idea of the aesthetics being important, and the idea of relaxation being important, does come up for younger girls and for older women as well. But yeah, I think the research to look at adolescents and younger people is still warranted, and there's actually not been much research on this topic. So typically, when researchers look at green spaces, they tend to focus on adults or children, and there isn't much done on what comes in between. So yeah, I think more research needs to be done in this area. And also this period of adolescence is a transitional period as well. It's not a static period. Girls and boys are constantly developing. Their brains are going through many different changes, and they're growing and developing, and eventually they're going to become adults one day. So I think that makes it more interesting to look at when you've got a group that is going through all these changes, and working with the challenge of how to create a space that will accommodate all of these different transitions and changes.
Thank you. Could you go, you had where are the suggestions? Maybe we could go to that slide, because I wonder what people think. Yeah, exactly.
This one.
Yeah. What should be different? Maybe you could say more about that, actually.
Yeah. So in terms of what I would recommend or suggest from these findings, well, the first is obviously for councils councils typically, what they do is they send out a newsletter or they send out a survey, but the people who receive them tend to be the ones who are very interested in the neighborhoods, and then also adults, typically older adults, and so they really get a biased opinion of what green spaces look like, or they only get one view of what green spaces should look like. So I think what needs to be done now is look at ways to reach out to younger people, whether that's to engage with them in schools, or their local youth groups, or even getting parents to get their children involved in things like co-design or things like the neighborhood. Or how about, does anyone in this group have any suggestions for how we can get younger people involved in like issues in the neighborhood, or how should we get them interested? Because I think that's part of the problem as well, is that that when we reach out to them, they are interested, but they don't come to us themselves to talk about these kind of issues. So can anyone think of a way that we could make it more easier for them to be involved?
I think it would be nicer maybe if you could like describe what type of issues exactly in the community you're talking about. It will make it easier for us to be able to engage.
Is that a question for me?
Yes, please.
Oh yeah, sure. So to specify the kind of issues in community. Issues in, so things like when, if a council is thinking about designing a new public space, so if they're thinking about redesigning a high street, for example, what should the high street look like? How do we ensure we can get everyone's views about what it should look like? Or another issue might be, if the council is going to build a new block of flats in your neighborhood, how do we ensure we also get the young people's views heard about this topic?
Sarah, since you've been doing this research, what do you think? Do you think the focus groups were a good way to involve young people? Are there any other ideas about how to involve them that you might have? What
I
kind
think
of events and strategies?
I think the focus groups were very appropriate because in comparison to, for example, in a one-to-one interview, in the focus groups you had, everyone knew at least one person. They were in the same classes, and they kind of already had that group cohesion. So it was very easy for them to kind of have this discussion about, what their parks should look like. If you just get a group of random teenagers together, and get them to discuss, a very serious topic or something that is going to be considered serious to them, I think you might have some trouble with getting them to talk. So I think the idea of going into schools and working with youth groups where they've already got this group cohesion and they already know each other, and then they can bounce ideas off of each other is a way to tackle that problem. Before we kind of jump off, does anyone have other questions about academia, what it's like to do a PhD, what it's like to study at UCL? I'm happy to also answer other academic questions.
That's great, Sarah. Great idea. If anybody here is thinking about a PhD. In fact, I know there are some people who were, but who are not necessarily on the call now. They were available before. But
yeah, or any questions about what it's like to be a researcher?
yeah, if any of you are thinking of, working academically long term like Sarah is doing, a good chance to find out what it's like. Maybe you could just say a bit, Sarah, about why you wanted to do a PhD and what you found from it. How it's been for you.
So I went into a PhD quite naturally. So I did a master's. Well, before I was doing my master's, I worked in research and I really enjoyed what I was doing. So I did consider doing a PhD. And then I applied for a scholarship, which was a master's and a PhD combined. So I applied for that and I got the scholarship to study basically public health, and to study what environmental risk factors there are for health and disease. And that kind of motivation came from my undergraduate degree, which was in psychology, and I was quite interested in people's mental well-being, but in particular I was very interested in the environmental factors, as opposed to the biological factors. So that's what I kind of just progressed and wanted to explore more of that. And then the topic of green spaces was also chosen by me. So I really wanted to look at green spaces because of the benefits they have for us and our health and well-being, but also how we can build community in these public spaces. And I like how central they are to our lives. So it's where you live. There's parks where you live. There's parks. There may be parks where you work. And yeah, they serve us and they serve the community. So yeah, that's why I wanted to do more about green spaces, and also this idea of nature and the impact that nature has on us, was also quite interesting to me. And it just kind of just naturally happened. It just naturally progressed into more research about that. And yeah, I've kind of specified in qualitative research methods. So I'm using things like interviews, focus groups, observations, to investigate the kind of questions that I'm interested in. And I think that provides a more richer account and richer information about people's lives and how people interact with physical environments. And I'm actually nearly finished, so I'll be hopefully done in the summer term next year. And I'm not sure what I want to do after that, but it's been a really good, positive experience. There's been ups and downs. It's quite challenging also to be a researcher. And you do get, there are bumps in the road and things can go wrong. So I didn't know, but for example, the pandemic happened in the middle of my PhD. So I had to quickly adapt and respond to those different those changes. I moved my focus groups. Originally, we were going to do them in the schools and do them in person, but I had to move them online and kind of consider how that's going to affect my research. So yeah, it's if anyone wants to go into academia or research, I'm happy to answer questions outside of this call as well. Feel free to email me.
Thank you. That's a very nice offer, Sarah. Maybe we'll put your email for reference for the group. Are there people here who think they might like to do, I don't know, if not a PhD, maybe research? Is that something that interests some of you?
Yes, I like that.
That's good to know,
I
Abdullah.
have two books. They print in America, The Way of Teaching. Other 7 books is they talking with about communism, Roman Empire, China, and Germany when the period of Nazis, and Italy and the Euro fascism.
Okay.
And other Western and Iraq, all the Iraq, they call it Hammurabi. He will say the mother not teaching her children the manners, it must be through the river of Dajla and Furat. He do they what calling in human Sharia, human law. And I was enjoyed those people, the different culture, different for Indian, and they must learn all the nations from the like human social. I was a couple of 3 years ago when the economic clubs they say want to learn the Arabic Chinese, so they are the way of business, where they treat it, where they in the industry, where they say the guy say, well, he's learning the school of business. He say we need to learn the other people something. You can learn other nations, other society, or other something positive. You can take it.
Definitely.
So,
Good point. Good point.
yeah, so we need to learn. I have 7 books that I lived in Netherlands, but how the children grow until they one month is until they're born, until they get the 2 years when they started the primary school, when they go teenagers, 17, 19, high school. So they are basically system and the other cultures, but it's the human. We must learn know the human. So what is human? How they think it. So they think it's not reaction. It's not coming the children, but coming maybe parents or something like that, or uneducated person.
Just before
So
we finish, maybe we can just see if there's anybody else who has research interests.
all right. So
If we're getting to the end, Abdullahi, so maybe we could just ask if anybody else here is interested in research.
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Abdullahi. It's good to hear about what you have been reading. Yeah, what about Matilda? Do you have interest in, I mean, I think you're planning to do some applications, I think. It'd be interesting to know what your research interests are. And Yosef as well. I kind of know about Adunia a bit.
Well, I'm kind of like Sarah as well. I'm really fascinated about the mind and how it works, everything to do with mental health. And yeah, probably if I enroll into school, I think I'm gonna study that. And yeah, it's gonna involve a lot of research on, people's well-being and everything. So yeah, I am interested.
Great. You do have a tutor, Matilda. I'm not sure if you're working with her at all to help out with application.
I'm not. Oh yeah, yeah. The one that was with us last week.
I don't know. No, she's called Corla, and I think she will have emailed you. I just need to check that you've got that email.
No, I haven't gotten the email yet.
Okay, let me see if I can find out about that. Great.
Lovely. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. Any more contributions before we just say a big thank you to Sara for this? Okay, well, Sara, thank you. I think we should let you go because you've given us a lovely presentation and many things to think about, much food for thought.
Thank you.
Very good luck with finishing your PhD, which is done.
No, thank you everyone, and it's really nice to. Yeah, I think it was really enjoyable for me to present my research to such a nice cohort of people, and yeah, like I said, I'm happy to help if anyone has any other questions about research, about my PhD. Yeah, I think Corinne can pass on my email later.
That's lovely. I will definitely do that. And there are messages in the chat saying thank you too. So
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want me to sign off?
I think we'll all sign off now, but the recording of this will be available just for the Olive students. So I'll send the link, and also to you as well, obviously, Sara. So
yeah, that would be great. Okay, thank you everyone.
Thanks everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.